Everyone thinks companies exist because human beings need to group together to accomplish complex work, right? That's the common belief. But the data points to a completely different and honestly much more dangerous reality. And if that's true, then the entire concept of a career, of corporate power, of labor itself is about to break.
Right, because we don't even see the structure we're operating inside of.
Exactly. There's this classic story that David Foster Wallace told in a commencement speech. An old fish swims past two younger fish, nods, and says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" And the two young fish keep swimming for a while until finally one looks at the other and says, "What the hell is water?"
Yeah, it's the perfect metaphor for this.
Yeah.
Because the most obvious realities are just, they're the hardest ones to see.
For anyone listening to this deep dive right now, your water is the traditional company, the firm. We spend our entire lives inside them. We sell to them, we build them, we depend on them. But we almost never stop to ask why they exist at all. I mean, why isn't every single person just a free-floating economic agent on an open market?
Because if you seriously pull on that thread, you realize that corporate structures are not laws of physics. They're temporary organizational technologies, and technologies become obsolete.
Then some very powerful people are already betting on that obsolescence. I want to share this piece of industry gossip that just totally hooked me. So Sam Altman is reportedly in a tech CEO group chat, right? And they are actively running a betting pool on a very specific milestone.
Oh, the solar unicorn bet.
Yes, they are taking wagers on the exact year the world will see its first one-person billion-dollar company, a solo founder unicorn.
Which is wild. The fact that top executives are literally gambling on this tells you everything you need to know about the precipice we're standing on.
Right.
Altman has said this concept is unimaginable without AI. The bottleneck has always been human coordination, not the tech itself.
And that brings us to the mission for this deep dive. We are looking at a brilliant essay by the team at This Plus That, and they argued that this solo unicorn isn't just some fantasy for billionaires to text about. It is an economic inevitability.
Yes, and before the end of this decade.
Right. So we're going to guide you through the hidden bottleneck that has prevented this from happening so far, and more importantly, why that bottleneck is finally breaking. But to understand how a massive firm shrinks down to one person, we first have to answer why firms exist in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to go back to 1937, right?
Yeah, Ronald Coase, he wrote this paper called The Nature of the Firm, and it completely upended economics. Because Coase looked at the world and saw a glaring contradiction.
Which was what exactly?
Well, economists have always loved free markets, right? Markets are supposed to be perfectly efficient at coordinating production through supply and demand, through prices. But Coase said, wait, if markets are so perfect, why do we have these massive command and control structures called companies? Inside a firm, a boss just dictates what you do. There's no market price for your daily tasks. It's a planned economy.
Right, which goes against pure free market theory.
Exactly. And Coase's breakthrough, which actually won him a Nobel Prize later on, was realizing that using the open market is not free. There is friction. He called them transaction costs. Okay, so not just the actual money you pay for a service.
No, not at all. He meant the invisible friction of the transaction itself. Finding a counterparty, negotiating the contract, writing it down, monitoring the work, and handling exceptions when things inevitably go wrong. When those costs are high, it's just cheaper to hire someone full-time and direct them by command inside a firm.
This makes me think of like renovating a kitchen. It's the perfect analogy for this. You could theoretically go to the open market for everything, hire a plumber, an electrician, a tile setter.
Which would be a nightmare.
A total nightmare, because managing their schedules becomes a full-time job. The drywall guy shows up before the wiring is done, the tile setter uses the wrong grout, and suddenly you are mediating a literal contract dispute in your kitchen. You are exhausted.
Right, the coordination load is crushing.
So instead, you pay a massive premium to hire a general contractor, and that general contractor acts as the firm. They absorb the transaction costs, they handle the headache.
And that's exactly Coase's point. A firm will keep growing, pulling more work inside its walls, right up until the exact point where organizing one more task internally costs the same as just buying it on the open market. That balance dictates the boundary of the firm.
But if transaction costs are the only reason firms exist, what happens when technology makes those costs plummet? Because I look at the last 15 years, and we've had the gig economy, Upwork, Fiverr.
Fractional executives.
Yeah, fractional CFOs, designers you can hire on a Tuesday for $50. It made spinning up a contractor incredibly cheap. So by Coase's logic, the firm should have dissolved into solo operators a decade ago. Why didn't it?
What's fascinating here is that we ran the experiment and it failed. The gig economy lowered the dollar price of a transaction, sure, but it did almost nothing to the coordination load.
It didn't solve the headache.
Exactly. It attacked the wrong cost. It made labor cheap, but it left the human coordinator as the ultimate bottleneck. This is the founder's burden. You can outsource 20 tasks on Upwork, but you still have to write 20 detailed briefs.
You have to chase people down for deadlines.
Right. You have to correct their errors. You are the human translator between the freelance designer and the freelance copywriter. And all of that invisible work lands squarely on one human being's attention span.
And biological attention has a hard ceiling. You can't hold 100 active freelancer contexts in your head at once.
You literally can't, which is why the org chart exists. You hire managers and then directors to manage those managers. The entire corporate hierarchy is just a giant cognitive load balancer.
Wow. A cognitive load balancer. That's okay, but I want to push back on this a bit, or at least look at the data driving the current trend, because the unbundling of work is actually accelerating right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, this plus that essay cites Maria Black at ADP. They process payroll for 1 in 6 American workers. That is insane visibility into the labor market. And she notes this massive shift from jobs to tasks. Plus, the Stanford Digital Economy Lab shows up to 16% fewer jobs in AI-exposed work since 2022. So if a job is breaking down into smaller tasks, doesn't that make it easier for a solo founder to farm it all out?
It sounds like it should. But breaking work down into finer pieces actually creates a paradox.
Definitely.
It's a double-edged sword. Finer decomposition lowers the cost of buying each piece, yes, but it severely raises the cost of coordinating the whole operation.
Because you have more pieces to manage.
Exactly. Think about a traditional marketing role. If that job splits into 5 tasks, copywriting, design, SEO, ad buying, analytics, you now have to write 5 separate briefs, 5 handoffs, 5 schedules to align.
Instead of just hiring one marketing manager who holds all those pieces together in their own head.
Right. The pieces of a company are more outsourceable than ever. But they're also more uncoordinated than ever. If a solo founder tries to manage that manually, they will drown.
So human attention is the ultimate bottleneck preventing the solo unicorn. But here is where it gets really interesting. How does that equation change when attention becomes infinite?
That is the paradigm shift. That is what the essay is getting at. People think AI is just about doing individual tasks like writing code or drafting an email. No. AI is the first technology that scales a single person's coordination capacity.
Okay, we need to dig into how this actually works, because this isn't just ChatGPT writing a polite email to a freelancer.
No, not at all. We're talking about an AI grounded in a deep knowledge layer, a dynamic vector database that holds your entire business context, your brand voice, your code base, your strategic goals.
So when I want to execute a campaign, I don't write 5 briefs.
Right. You give the high-level strategic goal to your core AI agent, and that agent queries the knowledge layer, drafts the handoffs, and sends them to specialized sub-agents or even external human contractors. It absorbs that entire brief chase correct loop.
It's acting as the general contractor.
Exactly. It monitors the work. It checks the output against your brand parameters. If a graphic uses the wrong color palette, the AI agent kicks it back for revision automatically. It only surfaces the rare exceptions to you, the founder.
Software is finally carrying the coordination load.
Yes. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Jack Dorsey and Roelof Botha recently made this brilliant argument. They pointed out that AI removes the span of control limit for managers inside a firm.
Span of control meaning how many direct reports a human can handle, usually like 7 or 8.
Right. AI removes that limit internally, creating incredibly flat companies. But the this plus that essay takes that exact same logic and applies it to the boundary of the firm.
Because the internal and external span of control are the same biological constraint.
Yes. They are the same limit on human memory. If you remove that limit on the boundary of the firm, you can continuously delegate to the open market. The transaction cost of coordinating that market drops to effectively 0, and the firm collapses inward to one person.
The bottleneck is not the model. The bottleneck is the system around the model.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? Is every company going to vanish into a server farm run by one guy? Does Apple or a giant pharmaceutical company become a solo venture?
No. We have to be clear about what AI and smart contracts absolutely cannot replace. The boundary of the firm is going to relocate aggressively, but the firm itself survives for 4 very specific reasons.
Okay, let's go through them. The first one they cite is deep asset-specific collaboration.
Right, which goes back to Oliver Williamson, the economist who built on Coase's work. Think about designing a next-generation microchip or a jet engine that is multi-year, highly intertwined
You
R&D.
should just upwork a jet engine.
You really can't. It doesn't break down into clean, independent tasks. You need the boundaries of a firm to align those massive financial incentives over a decade.
Okay, that makes sense for physical infrastructure, but what about the second reason? Trust and tacit knowledge.
Tacit knowledge is the unspoken understanding between human beings. It's knowing exactly how your colleague approaches a problem or the unwritten rules of a client's preferences.
Right.
That context gets destroyed the second you hand a task off to an external contractor or an AI agent. Firms act as walled gardens to protect that tacit knowledge.
Right. You can't put an unspoken vibe into a vector database.
Exactly. And the third reason is liability and regulation. Someone has to be legally accountable.
Because I can't just program a smart contract to hold my liability.
Regulators will not accept a decentralized swarm of AI agents as a defendant in a lawsuit. If your code crashes a hospital system, society demands a throat to choke. You need a corporate entity to hold liability, protect IP, and face consequences.
Which leads to the fourth reason, brand and relationships. Customers want a counterparty with skin in the game. They want to know you'll exist next year.
Right. So if your business relies on long R&D, tacit knowledge, heavy liability, or deep brand trust, the firm survives.
And this is a massive but. For the vast majority of the knowledge economy agencies, media, e-commerce, software, the minimum viable firm is rapidly dropping toward one.
It is, and we actually have historical precedent proving we are on the edge of this. Look at Instagram. When Facebook bought them for $1 billion, Instagram had 13 employees.
13 people for $1 billion.
And WhatsApp sold for $19 billion with about 50 employees.
Yeah.
Headcount value decoupled a long time ago.
Well, wait, 13 people is still not one person? There's a gap there. What were those 13 people actually doing all day?
That's the billion-dollar question. And the answer is mostly just keeping the work in sync, asking, who owns this bug? Did the server update? Are the assets ready? It's pure communication to ensure everyone shares the same state of the project.
It's coordination.
Exactly. Automating that communication is what closes the final gap. The cheap compute is here. The gig labor is here. The only thing missing was the software capable of carrying the founder's coordination load. And that is what is being deployed right now.
Which is why the essay conservatively predicts we will see this in the back half of the 2020s. A single person, sitting at the center of a web of agents, acting purely as a router of strategy.
I challenge anyone listening to look at their own calendar next week. Look at your inbox. How much of what you do is actually deep proprietary work, and how much is just syncing?
Alignment calls, status updates, bridging the gaps between other people's work.
If you're mostly doing that, you are acting as a human API. You are the transaction cost Ronald Coase identified in 1937, and AI is engineered specifically to absorb that cost.
That is unsettling. It really makes you rethink everything. We've spent a century looking at massive corporate hierarchies, these giant skyscrapers full of middle managers, as monuments to human ambition. We thought scale was a feature of success.
But what if it wasn't? What if the modern corporation was just a tragic, temporary workaround for the limits of human memory and attention?
We only built those towers because a single human brain couldn't hold the context.
Right, and now it can. Or rather, the machine can hold it for us.
So here is the real question for you to mull over. What breaks first? Is it middle management, commercial real estate, global corporate tax spaces, or the gig economy platforms themselves? Because if the biological limit on coordination is permanently removed, the entire economic architecture of the corporate world is just a relic.
The future will not arrive evenly. It will arrive wherever intelligence has the fewest bottlenecks.
And the race won't be won by the companies with the most models. It will be won by the companies that rebuild themselves fast enough to operate without the friction of a traditional firm. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Catch you on the next one.